Probably you have to remove the audio. We already did that. Good. So I don't know who is connected, but Paul, okay. So introduce the seminar of our visitor Giacomo Levrini from the University of Bologna. He's going to present his work on the job monitoring that he did in the Italian Institute for Nuclear Physics. And but yeah, he's here as a visitor to collaborate in our team, because in previous lives he was also programming FPGAs.
Yes.
So we were.
Yeah, I will talk of that in a minute.
Okay, good. So
Yes.
so he will present, say, both these contributions. So I leave it to Giacomo.
Yes.
And
Okay.
maybe later there is time for question, if any.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Filippo. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this, I believe, first Severo Cho research seminar of the December month. And today, as you can see in the title, I will present you a lot of acronyms, which are the INFN-CNAF Big Data Processing Infrastructure for High Energy Physics Job Monitoring. And the INFN-CNAF I will present you in a bit, but this is the schedule for the people who are attending this seminar. I will present myself, I will present the institute I'm working with, and their tools in this sense, and the other institute of which we are taking data and collaborating, and then I will give a brief of a demo of a display of this data, without any confidential data, of course. And yes, in the latest part, we will discuss a little bit of the outlook and future work of the Bologna session in this sense. So for the people who don't know me, I am Giacomo Levrini. I have a master's degree in nuclear and subnuclear physics, and I had the thesis during the latest 6 months of my master's degree, working with hardware accelerators as triggers for a high energy physics experiment. I will get a little bit in detail of what a trigger is later on, but it's not very complex indeed. And after that, I won a PhD in data science and computation in the University of Bologna. And in the first 2 years of the PhD, I worked still in the group of the same experiment, the Atlas experiment, inside the group of the trigger and data acquisition system. And later on, up to 1 year from now, yes, 1 year ago, I started a new work with the INFN-CNAF group in Bologna as a group administrator for their big data processing platform in general infrastructure. And first of all, a bit of history on what was the purpose of the INFN-CNAF, which is the National Institute of Nuclear Physics. In particular, the acronym CNAF stands for a National Center for Frame Analysis. Frame intended to be frame of particles, like here, which are at the time in the 60s pictures of particle detectors called bubble chambers, where particles crossed this detector, and then they took pictures of their passing through, and the lines are the trajectories. So analyzing the trajectories of the particles at the time was crucial to determine new physics in this sense, and to perform analysis on new physics that nowadays is already solid and validated. But of course, the INFN-CNAF objectives and in general achievement changed up to now. And of course, according to the evolution of the technologies and on the development of technologies in high energy physics contributions and experiments. In fact, up to now, the main site for the INFN-CNAF is in Bologna, in Viale Carlo Berti Piscià, as you can see in the map. And actually, inside the circle used to be, not anymore, the CNAF computing site, which this spring have been moved to the actual new site with the Leonardo Computing Center, which is not far from there, but it's now part of the Leonardo and the Cineca computing site. But the idea is that the need for this computing site was coming actually for a support for the experimental physicists which were working on data analysis in this sense. I will get up to now in details, but don't be scared. The idea is that this big data processing infrastructure seems to be complicated, but it's not actually. It's composed very simply of message producers, message brokers, message consumers, and a data monitoring tool. It's actually very simple, since all the blocks that you can see in the scheme are actually system components implemented inside a virtual machine. And the virtual machine has scripts and codes that actually do the job to transport data from the producer, which in our case are FileBit or either custom producers like Python. Then the broker, of course, slow down the data passage, creating queues for data and avoiding the overstream of data. The consumer reads and unpacks data as we want that, and OpenSearch is a tool which allows us to display data, and later on I will show you how a part of OpenSearch works. But yes, now, this is the first introductory part on what was my first approach to the NFN and their tools. But one question that may be flying in your mind right now could be, but why an Institute of Nuclear Physics needs a big data platform? Well, first of all, I tried to summarize it in 3 main reasons, but you can find hundreds of it. But the idea is that the INFN-CNAF hosts one of the tiers 1 computers and computing site directly connected to the CERN, which hosts, I believe, the largest network of high-performance computing platform in the world. And as you can see, they are plenty distributed along all the globe. But the idea is that Bologna hosts one of the direct connection, which could reach up to 10 gigabit per second of connection of data passing through directly from Geneva, where the CERN site is, to Bologna, and all to the others. Now, the reason is, of course, that people which work in physics in the latest 30 years have a very high need for computational power to perform data analysis, because we will see in a moment that the data to be analyzed is very, very huge. So having a great computational power is a suite and a tool that is indeed helpful, a lot, actually. But of course, it's the last but not least reason is that still the INFN-CNAF researchers need to monitor their machines and to actually keep a live track on what is happening with their data inside and what is happening with their components itself. So it's still a tool of auto monitoring and maintenance of the computing side itself. Okay. If this is all clear up to now, we'll need to switch a little bit on where now this data that is incoming from to this data platform that we're using is coming from. So first of all, CERN and LHC are our major data factory in this sense. Do not confuse the two things, because physicists can get angry. No, I'm joking. But the idea is that CERN is very, very famous and LHC is a little bit less. But the idea is that CERN is the complex of all the particle accelerators nearby Geneva. And this is a complex, very complex in this sense, since it has a lot of accelerators. LHC, which is the main producer of the latest, yes, I believe 12 years, yes, because it started in 2010, is the Large Hadron Collider. Hadron is a simple family of particles, don't be scared. And yes, it's one of these accelerators built across the site of CERN. As you can see, it's very, very huge. I don't know if you can read it, but LHC is a 27-kilometer ring. It's very, very large. And we need it very large because we need to accelerate particles up to the speed of light, almost. It's impossible to reach the speed of light, but up to that, to reach very high energy and to reach a very high center of mass hit point, which leads to a production of particles. Of course, we cannot see particles with our human eye. Actually, yes, one can be seen because our human eye is a particle detector, since we can see light. Light is one of the particles that is produced inside the LHC complex, of course, of higher energies. The light that we can see is the visible light of the colors, the common named colors. But the idea is that what we need to detect those particles are very, very large experiments. One of them, which is called ATLAS, is one of the largest one, as like CMS, and it's the one I've been working with in collaboration with, of course. But as you can see, these structures are very, 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 very large compared to human size. So they are very, very big for a reason. Energetic particles are very fast and they need to be, in some sense, stopped inside the detector to be detected, to be visualized by the infrastructure. Of course, the idea is that how do we select particles? Well, every particle, I don't want to make a lesson here, but you just need to know that every particle has a so-called signature. Every particle is a different type of interaction with matter, depending on the particle itself, of its energy, its speed. So it's all very correlated, but the idea is that every particle, as you can see here, has a different release of energy in the different layers of the experiment. This is a slice of the experiment, of course, it's a scheme, but the idea is that thanks to this energy release, we can convert this energy into readable electrical signals, analogic, then digital, and then we can produce information. How is this possible? Of course, it is possible thanks to a trigger and data acquisition system, which works as a filter, because having a lot of particles colliding and interacting leads to a very huge problem. How much data is produced in 1 second inside this experiment? So since we have around 10 to the 9th collisions inside those experiments per second, because you don't have to imagine a single proton against a single proton. They are traveling in sort of bunches, clouds of many, many particles. And around every 25 nanoseconds, they do collide. And all the collision produced release inside the detector a converted amount of information, which is around of 1 megabyte. So the idea is that then if we have 10 to the 9 collisions in a second and 1 megabyte per collision, we reach to an incredible amount of memory to be stored, which is 1 petabyte per second. Just to give you an idea, it would be like to fill completely 15,000 pen drive of 64 gigabytes in 1 second, fully, completely. But of course, as I was saying, those experiments have a sort of filter, a sort of system which selects, according to the theoretical studies, only the interesting events. So the TDAC works exactly as a seeker for these particular events, which have particular conditions, particular signatures, and then leads to a simply, but not so simple, collection of only 200 events per second, which leads to 200 megabytes per second, which is still, if you think, though, that CERN works around 300 days a year and works for almost 20 hours a day, yes, it's still a huge amount of data to be collected, which is 4 petabytes per year. And this data is, of course, stored inside a very huge database according to this general detection, thanks to the trigger and data acquisition system. And it's available to all the people that work for CERN, actually. The only thing is that you need to be a collaborator of the experiment you're working for, and you need to ask for data to be analyzed, because most of the data are still offline and still need to be analyzed. There's a need of data analysts that is huge for data that have been taken almost 10 years ago, that are still there to be unwrapped. But the idea is that this data is then available to all the people that work for CERN. And since the INFN-CNAF collaborates with them, I had to interact with the tool that allows the submission of jobs and the reach for data, which has a funny name, which is PanDA. The production distributed analysis, called PanDA for the Atlas experiments, is the workload system that allows the management of the submission of analysis and jobs analysis according to the user selection, and reaches then all the data needed to be analyzed and recalls then to a system of harvesters, all the computing power needed in all the network of the tiers that we saw before, and it then eventually produce the analysis of the data, and then user can monitor the produced analysis inside the monitors, as we will see how we did it. The only issue, of course, is that this is a simplified scheme. If you want, I can leave you the slide. There's a link on how the complexity of PanDA is actually more complex than that. This is just a summarizing idea of what actually PanDA is doing. But the idea is that the issue that physicists I've collaborated with encountered that PanDA only take into its dashboards, so into its monitor here, data for 48 hours. Since, of course, PanDA is a service for the global network, and for all the experiments and all the institutes that collaborate with CERN, it is impossible for them to keep data more than 48 hours. So for the physicists, it was impossible, at least at the time, to have a history of their dashboards other than, of course, downloading in the local machines and then reproducing the dashboards. But none of this work was done until up 1 year ago when I started to work with CNAF, because my job was actually to recollect these reports for these analysis jobs and collect them with a specific signature in this sense. So I only wanted to collect the reports for the job that were running in the machines in Bologna. So the two computing side, which are INFN-CNAF, INFN-CNAF ARM. And of course, I would give you a small example on what I was actually facing the first time, since you need to understand that, yes, I'm attending a PhD in data science, but this is what I was facing the first time I saw. So a bunch of JSON in not pretty shaped form, which though contains all the data regarding the experiment in this sense and the jobs analysis. Of course, we can pretty print it, but it's no use. It's only readable by human eye. But the idea is that I need to collect this data and inject it inside the big data platform. And that's what I did. I basically, thanks to an API and the help of CERN researchers, I was able to, of course, using my CERN credential, to recall this data and inject it inside the BDP infrastructure of CNAF. So allowing this data to be shaped according to what was the standard for our machines. And then we were able to plot it and display and see the data incoming. Now, I will give you a bit of a demonstration because, yes, these are the data that I've been collecting since the pipeline has been, in this sense, active. And if you give me a minute, so you can relax a little bit and breathe. Oops, sorry, there are things you cannot see here. The confidential, sorry. But still, yes, because there's a part of this dashboard that is private and cannot be shared with you. Okay, but yes, this is what we can actually see in this sense. So
Can you zoom a bit?
yes, in a minute I will. So for instance, okay, I hope that everyone can see. But yes, for instance, with this dashboard, we can monitor and see how many jobs are entering, how many jobs are actually finishing or failing, and we can select. The most powerful thing of this tool is that we can select periods of time that can be shaped and can be arranged as our needs. So to focus or simply select which periods are more interesting than other, and understanding in this sense what happened to the machines. But the idea is that all these plots were asked me to be built and to start to study and to at least start the data collection and the data plotting of the results. That was my task up to now, but yeah, we still have things to do. But the idea is that this tool is very, very powerful, since we can, I think, zoom data. I cannot apparently, but well. Well, these were all the plots that were asked me actually to monitor, but I won't spoil anything. So the idea is that we have an interactive tool that allows us to see and interact with this data. We still need, though, to understand how to manage it. But yes, the most requested in this sense plots were the ratio within the jobs that were finishing without errors and the jobs that were actually failing for any reason. And the ratio is not bad. I mean, it's 91% against 9% of failed jobs. And it's good, even though, yes, my future job is to actually analyze why the errors are failing. So the population of failed errors is actually a little bit low. And another distribution that we wanted and it was asking me to study was to plot the distribution according to the computing elements that are assigned in software and to see if the distribution was even or at least it was not so distant in terms of comparison. As you can see, if we took actually long period, it's almost the same. It's almost around 20%, which is number of the computing elements, so 5, which is good.
What is the color here?
The color is that every element is the computing element assigned inside the servers. It's like the computing slots, which are the number 2, 3, 4, and 5, which embeds different computing actually inside. They are macro areas that include servers.
So you want to have an even distribution among color as much as possible?
No, yes, in theory, yes, but because this is, I forget to say that this is the finished jobs inside this machine, so the job that did not finished with errors.
Okay.
But the idea is that what we want to understand is also how the fails are distributed in this machine, if there are discrepancies within them and why. So it's a part of the analysis that we want to foreshade in this sense and to analyze in the future, but still, yes, we are just collecting errors because, as you can see, the maximum number of errors here is around 8,000, but in the previous slide, we have much more, of course, peaks, which are very, very, very large for finished jobs. And one thing that was asked in particular from the physicist I'm working with was to monitor actually the computing side, which in their machines mounts some ARM CPUs, which are prototypes, and to see in which percentage, because we know that, at least in Bologna, we know that these farms are not used completely for the computing infrastructure, but they are used also for other things for other testings. But sometimes they are online and they are available and they are working fine. And they asked me to monitor how many jobs were assigned to these machines up to now. And yes, the most important actually data plot that I was able to produce was the plot which recalled the error messages, which is the last part I did before leaving Bologna, and which is then the first part I will work on when I will be back, because this part embeds all the error messages that we could collect up to now. And the idea is that now we want to analyze these errors, and we want to actually, in theory, build a sort of a software or a tool, or I don't know, I need to discuss this with my colleagues, but the idea is that we want to implement a machine learning algorithm able to read the errors and tell us when the error is related either to the software, so not in our machines, or either it's inside the hardware and it's a problem of the machine itself. Of course, this part is still ongoing, and actually it was starting when I left in September. So I did not have the response from my colleagues in the latest months because we had different paths and different things to do. But yes, the idea is that up to now, this is the results I performed in the latest year, and up to the end of my PhD, which will be in next November of the next year. We will try to produce this machine learning suite, and we would like to test it. Of course, now the failures and the data which have failed jobs are a little bit low because we would like to have at least 3 data sets with a larger number of entries, because it's a little bit low still. But of course, another thing that would be in theory asked to me, but also to the INFN-CNAF, is to open all the infrastructure suites to all the others researchers which work in other experiments like CMS, ELIS, and LHCb, which are the all major experiments and the major researchers in Bologna and they're working on. But yes, this is all part of the future of the work, and this is all for my seminars today. Thank you for your attention. If you have any question up to now, I will be pleased to answer you. Thanks.